In week one of 2016, the chaos in the Middle East has dramatically spiraled. Two powers in the region, Saudi Arabia and Iran, are now in a diplomatic standoff. In Afghanistan, the Taliban has waged new attacks against our troops, killing one on Tuesday and injuring two others. And as ISIS maintains its grip in Syria and Iraq, a frightening new video has emerged of weapons experts training terrorists. Former Defense Intelligence Agency Chief Mike Flynn thinks chaos has emerged as a result of President Obama's retreat from leadership. He says enormous challenges lie ahead for our next leader.
The importance of this next national election is huge because whoever is the President of the United States is going to deal with an absolute mess on their hands. And it's going to last for a long time, potentially their entire presidency. Whenever there's a void of U.S. leadership, it will be filled, and it will be filled by dictators, by terrorists, by those threats that we face.
You just heard General Flynn say how important this election is to fight overseas. So what do the candidates make of the conflicts?
When I'm president, we're going to have a real war on terror. Not a rhetorical war, a real one, which means this. The best intelligence agencies in the world are going to tell us where they are and what they're doing. The most capable military force in the world is going to destroy them.
You look at what's going on in the world. We're the policemen of the world. We owe $19 trillion. We just made a ridiculous budget, you know, the omnibus that just got approved. The only thing Obama negotiates well with, frankly, are the Republicans. He always seems to come out on top with the Republicans. Iran beats him. Everybody beats him. We're the laughingstock all over the world.
With Iran and Saudi Arabia, keep our nose out of it. The difference between Shia and Sunni, that fighting has been going on since about the 6th century. And the last thing we need to do is to get in the middle of it.
So the question remains, is the Middle East on the brink? With all the swirling conflict, growing tensions in the area, it is definitely a national security quagmire, to say the least, where leadership is needed. You heard Flynn saying that this has been because of a vacuum from President Obama. Do you think the candidates, Eric, are sending the right message and tone to contrast with the president's?
I do. I think they're smart. They're on it. They realize, especially Kasich realizes that this is one you really, Saudi Arabia versus Iran, you probably don't want to get too involved in this. This is Sunni Shiite conflict. You could basically do that in many of the various countries throughout the Middle East. If you start picking and choosing sides on those lines, you'd need a roadmap to figure out who was your friend and who was your foe. I think you have to let that play itself out. This is ugly, though. This Iran-Saudi Arabia thing. The Saudis allegedly dropped bombs on an embassy within Iran. This is unbelievably explosive. It has implications for Americans. It has implications for global economies. Oil prices could skyrocket on something like this. They didn't, but they could. I think the smartest thing to do is to kind of pull yourself out. The question is, for John Kasich, who I agree with, stay out of that. What happens to the other ones then? Do you pull yourself out of the other ones? Why is a Syrian civil war something we need to be involved in?
Boy, you surprised me.
Why?
I never thought that you would say something.
Have you been here for the last 2 years?
Yeah, but I tend to agree with you. That's just surprising.
So since you agree, we'll skip you now. That counts for two. Dana, what's the messaging here? What do you think is going on in the White House in terms of how they're handling this? What kind of diplomacy or engagement, involvement should we be doing?
I think it's analysis by paralysis, right? So that's what General Michael Flynn was saying, and it's one of the reasons that he resigned. We already chose sides with Iran. Okay, we gave them the store when we gave them their nuclear agreement, and so that was why the Saudis have felt like we have not been living up to our agreement to provide for their security. They don't trust our judgment, so they went ahead and they did the execution. That irritated Iran to a great extent, so they're already picking sides. But Eric, when you say, like, for example, I agree with you, like, this could have major consequences for us, so then the question is, then do you just pull out altogether and let them fight it out? But if it has consequences for us, do we have a role to play? And what role is that going to be? And I think the thing that's very frustrating for the White House is that they were counting on both Iran and Saudi to be at the table to try to deal with these ISIS talks, so to speak, like to try to figure out some sort of agreement. But now, if the Saudis helping basically represent the rebels and Iran basically representing Syria, with Russia's help, then they were all supposed to come to the table. Now, nobody's at the table. So the one small hope that the administration had of being able to say we're trying to get a handle on ISIS is now evaporated. So then the question is, well, so what's the president's strategy, and what is he willing to change, if anything? And it probably doesn't help in an election year that you have candidates who are not giving fulsome responses, they're giving sound bites here and there, that are weighing in and chipping at the president's strategy or lack thereof. And that makes it more difficult even for a president to actually be able to go ahead and either admit that they need to change horses midstream, or to just basically sit back and wait and then bequeath to his successor a huge mess like General Flynn was talking about.
Can I just throw this in very quickly? One of the issues here, and I would agree with the administration on this, is how do you back the Saudis for hanging 47 people in a day?
And that's why you don't. And that's why it's always been extremely tricky. It's never been like a black and white issue. It's extremely tricky with everybody.
But that's how they deal with stuff.
But we attack the president for leading from behind. But then when we say we're not going to be there, I mean, that's a decision, and that's a foreign policy, and some people do support it. But there are consequences to that, too, and we can't pretend that that doesn't have an effect on American soil at some point if we are concerned about ISIS proliferating in the region, which is my original point. And I've taken up too much of your
Greg,
time.
if you have a Rubik's Cube of the Middle East, how are you going to shape-shift this into something, to a solution?
Well,
solve it.
We always begin these segments with the Middle East is on the brink, as if there's nothing else but the brink. There's no other area. They should rename it the brink. That entire part of the country should be called the brink, because it's been the brink for 4 decades. We'll change the name to Earth's bursitis, because it is a chronic pain that you're stuck with forever. And the fact is, the only time you step in at this point is when it becomes your problem.
Right.
And I think Syria, we should have stepped in, because it's our problem now. It is Europe's problem. What we're seeing right now is a chaotic migrant nightmare, because we didn't want to do anything. Granted, the choices weren't great. We had no choices. But right now, we're in a scenario. It violates the Middle East crisis rule. Generally, there should only be 2 hotspots, you know? But now there's 4. That's kind of like, you know, when you only wake up in the morning with one big zit. The Earth has 4 of them in the same place, and you can't pop them all. It's a rash. It is a rash. It is a rash. I would go to a dermatologist. If I saw 4 big blackheads,
oh my God!
I would go to the doctor.
You've got a lot of personal problems. You've got bursitis. You've got like acne. What else? Gout.
They are the crazy couple that lives in apartment 12C that you avoid at all costs until the drunk guy, you know, punches your son, or the crazy lady insults your wife. That's the Middle East. It is the crazy couple, and you only step in until the crazy couple steps in your life.
Well, I just think it's terrific that this table, as I famously say, is not echoing General Flynn in terms of General Flynn saying, oh, gosh, you know, there's a big strategic football game going on, and we're not even in the States.
I'm echoing him.
I just said that.
No, I don't think you said that. I think that what you said is that we have difficult choices to make here, and that if you look back over the history of this situation, you have several administrations. I think back to Bill Clinton's administration, forward to the Bush. Lots of people have made difficult choices in this area. And right now, we have to look.
It's why you're president.
Right. And I think that right now, we as Americans have to come together and not, which is, I saw some of that from the candidates, get in the blame game in terms of pointing fingers at Obama.
That is going to happen.
But I don't think...
There's a whole election year. It happened in 2008. It happened in 2004. I mean, that just happens in an election year. So we just have to accept that.
Well, I don't think it's good. I think, given that there is a deal in place right now with Iran, that there has to be a sense of, you know what, we have to now do what Hillary Clinton said, which is, you know, distrust and verify. You have to be...
Well, then why did the administration back off on doing the sanctions against Iran last week? Right.
Because they understood what was going on.
No, because they had briefed Capitol Hill. They had said the Treasury is going to do this in 3 hours. An hour and a half later, they pulled it back, and now they're not going to do the sanctions anymore?
Not on that one moment. But that's not to say that it's not coming.
They violated the agreement. They blatantly violated the agreement.
That's not doing what Hillary said.
Not only in a small way, they violated it in, less than a mile away from an aircraft carrier, a U.S. aircraft carrier.
There's no argument about that.
It was
but the argument is, are you now going to escalate on the basis of that one?
How about forget escalation? Just stop paying. Just don't send a check.
Well, that's one start right there. But, Eric, you brought something up that I think is very important. It's significant in the region. And Dr. Sebastian Gorka weighs in on this about the Saudi airstrike on the Iranian embassy, and we'll get your reaction.
We are obsessed with ISIS, with the bad guys, with the jihadis that want to kill us here in America. But that's just part of this much larger war for who's going to control the Middle East. We should be supporting those guys who are on the front line of this war, who are on our side already, especially Egypt, especially Jordan. And we're not touching them because, you know, Sisi used to wear a uniform. This administration doesn't like him. You know, I think there was a certain guy called Eisenhower who used to wear a uniform and became a president. We have to understand that this is a war between two extreme religions.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a war between two extreme religions. When you break it down and you put the map up there, you know, the place they call it the brink, the Middle East, it's between two warring religions. That's the issue.
Yeah. Look, support our friends, support our allies financially, support our allies, and the rest have at it. I mean, listen, I would disagree with the whole that the refugee crisis. Was there anything to do to stop that from happening?
Yeah.
If you take out
Assad,
then does the rebel forces, do they become ISIS and they're ticked off that we were there anyway? I don't know. Look, support your friends. You have Jordan, you have Egypt to a certain extent, you have the Saudis, I guess, and 3 or 4 other countries, and make sure that the brink doesn't go over the brink.
The other thing too is what has America done in absence by not going there? Where did they go? They went to America. We have devoted the past 8 years to a full-blown identity crisis. America is wondering what we are. We're not thinking about the world. And so instead of finding fault in perhaps terrorists and killers and tyrants and crazy people, we go after people with different views on marriage, or we go after people that we believe might be racist because they're in law enforcement, or we call people sexist because they disagree with you on certain...
Because they made money on Wall Street.
Because they made, yeah, exactly. So what we have now is we have this internal conflict, which is draining all of our energy, so that when we look over there, it's like...
We're exhausted.
We're exhausted. Yeah. I know I am, Kimberly.
Too tired to fight.
I'm too tired to fight.
I'm not.
Let's hug.
Oh, no. Okay. Quickly hug. Anything else?
Wrap it.
I like Gorka. I like his voice.
So do I.
Is that an
Find
amazing
him
voice?
Soothing and amazing. Right, Dana? Like queso. Like we love queso. That's an inside joke.
More to come on that.
All right. More to come on that.